Hello, and welcome back to the Stories of Northern Life podcast, brought to you by the Sault Ste. Marie Museum. So coming up for the next little bit, we are going to be doing a series looking at historic interviews with some members of the Jewish community. So this interview is of Wilf Cohen from 1993.
May 9th, 1993. How did your family come to Sault Ste. Marie?
My family came to Sault Ste. Marie on their honeymoon.
That's interesting.
My mother and father were married in Cornwall, Ontario, and I don't know why they chose Sault Ste. Marie for their honeymoon, but they got on a train at Cornwall and changed in Toronto and came to Sault Ste. Marie. And it was a pretty bleak-looking town at that time. That was 1900. And the only industry here was the start of Algoma Steel. Algoma was very small then, but Francis J. Clerg, the promoter of the Sioux and the industry in the Sioux, had a number of big ideas and small pocketbook, and he went around to all his friends in New York and everywhere he could think of to raise funds, and he put the funds in an industry in the Sioux. At that time, my father, obviously I wasn't here then, but my father and mother decided that they liked it here, and they went back to Cornwall and Three Rivers, Quebec, where my father had a business, and some interest in Maine, and he wound everything up. In 1901 they came back to the Sioux. I doubt that there were any Jewish people here then, but so it must have been quite a struggle to start whatever they did at that time. They started a business, a small business, and it grew, and they grew with, I guess, Algoma Steel.
What was the business that you started?
A scrap iron business. And actually their first location was at the foot of Pym Street, where the Provincial Air Service is. I think maybe most of you know about the Provincial Air Service. That's where the museum is now, the aircraft museum. And my father built a dock there, and most of the shipping was done by water, in and out. They had a tug and a scow, and they hauled wood, cut wood, on St. Joe's Island. The company bought a lot of property on St. Joe's Island, and they had men cut timber down there and saw it up in a stove size length, and they hauled it up to the Sioux, to the dock by scow, and they sold wood to the most people. Most stoves were fired by wood in those days. And then they branched out and started to sell coal, and they bring coal in by water, and they were the first coal company. They called it Cohen's Clean Coal. There was a big sign out in front. We have a picture of it. And the wagons, the horses and wagons, had signs on the side, Cohen's Clean Coal. And my father liked horses, and he used to go to Toronto to pick up his horses because they kind of wear out in a year or two hauling these big wagons, and the winter time was pretty tough on them. And the other thing was that a lot of their sales were in Sioux, Michigan, strange as it may seem. And their scrap sales and metal sales were in Sioux, Michigan.
Was the Jacobson, were they in business at that time in Sioux, Michigan, or?
Not at that time. They came in later. There was a scrap firm by the name of Friedman, and Phil Jacobs started out working for Friedman in the scrap business. And Friedman bought scrap from my father and others and shipped it south to Chicago and wherever the use was.
You have another question, Amy?
What was it like being a Jew in Sault Ste. Marie?
Well, I wasn't a Jew until later, but my experience wasn't quite what some of the others who were born and lived here and stayed here all their lives. I unfortunately left town to go to school. I was sent for some reason or other to school in Toronto.
How old were you then?
About 8 years old, 9 years old. And I remember being in Toronto when I was 13. And we had a branch business in Lachine, Quebec, and I was sent down there to help in the business when I was that age. And I drove a car
At 13?
at 13.
All right.
And I drove in Montreal, which was quite I don't know whether I'd have the nerve to do it now or not.
Who did you live with? Who did you live with when you went to Toronto?
In Toronto, I lived at a boarding school.
When did you come back to Sault Ste. Marie then?
Well, in the 20s, we had a big depression all over the world, and our business, like all others, was practically shut down. There was no operation at all, and the boarding school where I was rather expensive, and I guess for that reason I came back to high school here, and I finished up my Sioux education at the Sioux Collegiate. Back in, that would be about 1927, I think, around 1927, yeah.
How about your brothers and sisters? Well, did they go away also? First of all, I don't know whether you had the question down there, Amy, or not, but how many brothers and sisters do you have?
I have, or had, 2 brothers and 8 sisters. And they were all sent away to school. I just can't imagine how now through the various depressions, but that's what took place. Any questions?
Back to the family, Amy, if I can interrupt you. You have 2 sisters that are still in the Sioux, am I right?
Yes, that's right.
Okay. Lovedee?
Lovedee and Ruth, yeah.
And you have other sisters where now?
one is in Florida, Palm Beach, and that's all that are living, I guess.
And your brother Joe is?
He's in Southern Ontario.
I'm sorry, Amy, you can go ahead now.
Was your family observant?
Big pardon?
Was your family observant?
In the early days of the Jewish people in this area, everybody was observant. There was only one type of religion here, and that was Orthodox, strictly Orthodox. There was no, and that was the case all over North America. There weren't any Reform shuls, and there weren't any conservative, and certainly none of the offshoots. Just when I was in Toronto, there were in the years that I was in Toronto, there were two shuls, two large shuls. One was the University Avenue shul, which was strictly Orthodox, and the other was the Bond Street shul, which was Reformed, just starting out and becoming very successful. They got a lot of. Seemed that when people made money and did well in their businesses or their endeavors, they became Reformed or conservative.
That's interesting.
And they seemed to go to the wealthier people gathered in one community and the others in their own.
How did your family manage to be observant here? What did you do about food?
Well, they were strictly kosher. My father was his second love was, other than making a living, was farming, and he always had a farm. He had a farm on St. Joe's Island. He had a farm at different times, and we still have a piece of property here that was one of the Cohen farms. And we had a farm. The later farm was in Cora. I don't know whether you've ever heard of the golf course there, Adam, that used to be in Cora. It's a long time ago, before your time, but there was a very nice small golf course which was owned by Algoma Steel, the corner of Second Line and Allen Side Road. And my father bought that, and he wasn't a golfer, so he plowed it all up, which was a shame, because 10 or 15 years later, golf became quite the thing. But he had, on these farms, he only had one at a time, but he raised cattle and chickens and you name it. He had turkeys and goats, and that was mostly our meat from the farms. And my father went away and got a license to slaughter cattle for himself, for his family, and he did his own slaughtering, killed his own chickens, and other than that, we got our meat from Toronto. There were kosher butcher shops tried here in the Sioux in conjunction with other butcher shops, but they were never very successful. They'd last maybe a year, and then there wouldn't be enough customers, and then the butcher'd cheat and maybe try to sell some of the ordinary meat for kosher meat, and it'd get mixed up in a mixed butcher shop anyway. So they gave up the idea of kosher butcher shop in the Sioux. And those people that wanted to keep kosher got their meat from Toronto, or Montreal, but mostly Toronto. I think the families that I remember that kept kosher were, well, they all did at one time. But latterly, the Davis family did, and the Friedman family, and our family. Maybe, yes, the Himmels did too. But they also found, I think, don't quote me, but I think they found that their butcher was cheating in Toronto. You don't know when at one time they used to say they were kosher, but they weren't checked by any rabbinical group, and there were a lot of them that sort of cheated. But it was difficult in those days getting meat from and other goods from Toronto. Transportation wasn't the same.
How was it transported up here?
By train and in dry ice.
Hard and expensive also.
Very, very expensive, yeah. But they used to get, well, there's no comparison between what it is today and what it was, but it was expensive. And it was relative, in those days a dollar went a lot farther. Any questions?
Was there anti-Semitism here?
Always, a certain amount. The most noticeable was just after the war. A lot of German immigrants came to the Sioux because of Management Tube. Management Tube was a manufacturing branch of Management in Germany, and they brought in a lot of their expertise. A lot of their superintendents came in, and some of them were still very, very anti-Semitic. And they had there was much more hate literature floating around then than there is now. We had a real epidemic of it for a while.
It was like in the 40s after the Second World War?
Right after the Second World War.
It's interesting because we tend to think now when we hear about the things that are going on in Canada and the hate literature that it's getting worse, and maybe it's not as bad as it even was previously.
In the Sioux, it was quite bad. We had one man by the name of Schifferneck who brought all his feelings with him from Germany, and he devoted all his time to standing on the corner distributing hate literature. And one of the print shops here, which was German-owned, printed all this hate literature. And one of the worst was that Kammer shop down that's still in existence. Not Walls, the other one. The one east of East Street on Queen. I think it's called Kammer Shop. And he was very, now he's changed now. He's become more liberal and Canadianized.
How was that on you and on other Jews living here? How did
It didn't do us any material harm, but certainly didn't make us feel very good. We had meetings with B'nai B'rith. At that time, we had a B'nai B'rith lodge in the Sioux, which was very active, but it was affiliated with Chicago. We were, I've forgotten the number, but we were an affiliate of the main B'nai B'rith Lodge in Chicago. And Toronto didn't recognize us. And Frank Richardson and I went to Toronto, and we had a very large meeting of the Toronto B'nai B'rith, the main group, about hate literature in Sault Ste. Marie. And they sort of poo-pooed it because they said it was an ongoing thing in Toronto and Montreal, and they didn't worry about it because it was an everyday thing. And if we got a little bit of it, well, too bad. And we didn't get any, and I think it was because we weren't affiliated with the Canadian B'nai B'rith. We had a very active lodge here for a few years, and then somehow or other we lost interest, and the Canadian group didn't help us any. And as a result, we've sort of haven't affiliated with them. Nobody's been interested enough to do it. They are a good organization, though, in Canada, because they do. There's a lot of, there's a tremendous amount of anti-Semitic work, or anti-Semitism going on in Eastern Canada, more than in Western Canada. And I think the B'nai B'rith look after it more than the Congress or any other organization.
What was the Jewish congregation like then as compared to now?
Well, there again, I'm not in the best position to be the spokesman on that question, because I spent a good deal of my life away. I was at school, and then I managed a branch of our business in Michigan for about 10 years, and also in Quebec. But I'd say in the early days, say the 20s, prior to the 20s, there weren't very many Jewish families here because there wasn't much for them to do. In the 20s, that's the 1920s, a lot of Jews came to the Sioux to start small businesses because the small retail store was very popular. There weren't any malls at that time, and there weren't any of the big stores. So most of the stores, the clothing stores and the grocery stores and all the stores were pretty well started by Jews. And they were mostly Orthodox. And we didn't really get together very much, that I recall, until there was a catastrophe. You know, it needed a minion for a yurt site, or some other thing. But socially, the Jews were not, in the early days I'm talking about, were not as social as they are now. Then, after the 20s and into the 30s, there were quite a few families here. There were something like 60 or 70 families. And between Sioux, Michigan and Sioux, Ontario, we could really have a big organization. But unfortunately, before I say that, we did our worshiping in halls. We had our first shul hall over the present location of the Hub clothing store. There is a hall over that store, and there's a hall at the corner of over the Kiwi restaurant, the corner of Queen and East. And then there was a hall across the road, Columbia Hall, and we had conducted services there. Good morning. Happy Mother's Day. And then because of the fact that a lot of the Jewish people were in the same line of business and competitors, they began to not talk to each other. And there was a regular feud in the Sioux for a while. It didn't only take place here, it was the same in all the other towns in Michigan and Wisconsin and towns we knew of. And the result of that was that we had a split congregation. And the other thing was that every Jew that had a religious education wanted to be a leader. And they all wanted to conduct a service. Not all, but those that had the knowledge wanted to conduct their own service. So you had about 30 people arguing about who was going to be their leader. And they couldn't afford to bring in a man from Toronto. They did at times. But the result of it was the congregation split. And for maybe 10 or 15 years, maybe more, they had two congregations here.
When was this time? What date?
This was in the 20s and 30s. Going into the 40s. But it was off and on. You know, some years they'd be friends, and then a few years they'd disagree over something. I wasn't in on it at the time, so I don't really remember what the arguments were about. But I know and my father was in the scrap business, and there was a man by the name of Portnoy in the scrap business. They lived here. They were very nice people, but they were competitors. And they didn't get along, and they both wanted to lead the parade. And so they were financially able to rent a hall. So they would rent a hall, and then they had difficulty getting a minion. And I remember when I was at home, my dad asked me to go over to the Ojibwe Hotel to see if there were any salesmen that were Jewish staying at the hotel, bring them over and feed them and make a minion, take them to shul. And some of our worshipers were strangers that came and we used to go and get them, pay their fare, and to get them so that we could get 10 people.
And the other congregation was trying to do the same thing?
They did the same thing, yeah. And at that time, there were some Jews that were, to answer your question, up in Wawa. There were some in Blind River. There was one in Espanola, or Thessalon, and quite a number in Sioux, Michigan. And we'd certainly try to get as many from Sioux, Michigan as we could. But we had competition in Sioux, Michigan because Petoskey was trying to get them. And there was sort of a scarcity of minions.
What's the story about the building of the shul then? Because your father was the one, I think, who was instrumental in that, am I right?
Yeah, well, they saw my father and a few of the people that were more interested in a shul. There were some Jews here that thought a shul was a terrible thing to have because of anti-Semitism. They were afraid that putting a shul up would create feeling amongst the people. And but anyway, my father made up his mind to have a shul, and he got some supporters, and they, in 1948, they went ahead and raised the money and bought the property and got a contractor, and it was pretty much, oh, Max, Happy Mother's Day again.
Thank you very much.
And it was pretty difficult. There were a lot of fights. There was a committee formed. Mr. Turgoff was one member, and Mr. Davis was another member, and Mr. Himmel was the third, and my father was the fourth. And they would sit down to argue, and they did argue. And then they'd all go away mad, and then my dad would do what he wanted to do anyway. And actually, he got the contractor, a fellow by the name of King, very, very nice young man, and he was able to get along with my dad, and so the other contractors couldn't. So
What was your dad's name?
Benjamin. And anyway, he didn't do anything else but build this shul at the time. That was his baby. And they had a lot of arguments. You weren't here then.
No.
You missed it. They had the one, Morty Turgoff talks about his father, and I don't know whether you read his books or not, but he and his father didn't get along very well. And he's got something about the building of the shul in one of his books. And it's quite interesting and quite true. They actually had an agreement to countersign checks. Every time there was an advance made to the contractor, they had to sign a check, and there had to be 4 signatures on the check. And they had an awful time getting the check signed. And one time, I remember one occasion where my dad had to get a check signed for the contractor. So he always had a hard time getting the other 3 together because they were busy in their own businesses. And I remember he finally got them together, and they were to meet in the bank, and which was across the road from the hotel that we operated at that time, corner of Bruce and Queen. And when they got there, Mr. Turgoff refused to sign the check because he wanted to know all the details. And there weren't any details because there was just a check to sign. So he hauled off and hit my dad in the bank, and then he hauled off and hit Mr. Turgoff and knocked him for they had a real fight right in the bank.
And knocked him, did you say?
Oh yeah, he knocked him over. And then he grabbed him by the collar and he said, "Sign this check."
Did he sign it?
Oh yeah, he signed it. But that was just one occasion. They had a lot of fights over the shul.
Very strong personalities out there.
But they built it. And Mr. Davis, Mr. Himmel were they were very good about the whole thing because they wanted the shul, but I don't think Mr. Turgoff wanted the shul. Anything else?
Are you glad you lived in a small Jewish community? Have there been any disappointments?
Not that I can think of, except that my main disappointment in looking back would be that I was sent away to school, and I should have been sent away to a yeshiva. I would have been happier now had I had a better Jewish education. But when you went away to school, there were just two choices. One was to go to an English school, and the other, there were very few yeshivas in the early days. Anyway, I think there was, the only one when I was growing up was in Montreal, I believe. I don't know whether there's any in Toronto or not. But today, a boy getting a yeshiva education it's good.
What kind of Jewish education did you have? Any, formal?
Very little, very little. We had, when I was growing up, there were times when we weren't even speaking to the Jewish people here. And my father brought in a man to teach me Hebrew, and but it didn't last very long because I had other activities designed for me, and I didn't really learn what I wish I had.
Did you have a bar mitzvah?
Oh yes, I had in Toronto, big one, in Holy Blossom Synagogue. And that was, my bar mitzvah in Toronto was the inauguration of Rabbi Brittner, the very famous rabbi that was brought in from Cincinnati to the Holy Blossom to take over. And they had a lot of people there, so it was pretty public. And I went down and got a bar mitzvah education at the shul, but unfortunately, you should have almost lived in that area to belong to the shuls then, because it was hard to get there when you were going to school, another school.
Was it pretty much the same for Jack and Joe also with their Hebrew education?
Pretty much, yeah, pretty much.
Not too much formal education?
No, not. They went to, but Jack and Joe attended a Heder here. During the time when they were young, they did have a Heder, but it wasn't like you have here. There didn't seem to be any necessity to talk Hebrew or read Hebrew except out of the Bible. Hebrew was a must to be able to read in shul. But other than that, we weren't taught that there was ever going to be a conversational language. That's only taken place since Israel.
I'd like to know about your family.
Anyway,
About your family. Your family.
my family? You mean my mother and father?
Were you married or?
Yes, I was married. I was not married to a Jewish girl. I was married to a non-Jewish girl. Unfortunately, in the Sioux in the early days, there weren't very many Jewish people or Jewish boys or girls our ages. It never seemed to be. The girls, as I remember, had maybe one friend, one Jewish girlfriend, but the others were all non-Jewish. It just seemed to be the way it was here because there weren't very many here.
Your wife was from Houghton?
Yeah, or Calumet.
Calumet.
May I ask you a question?
Yes.
I was wondering how large, I know they were up and down, but how large was the Jewish community at in Outset? When the first families came in, for instance, when your dad came in at the turn of the century, were there other Jewish families here?
No, there weren't.
He was the first Jew to come.
As far as I know, I may be corrected, but as far as I know, they were the first. See, they came in 1900, and there were really no stores here in 1900. Maybe factory stores or outlets, but not the stores. Storekeepers came in about in the 20s.
And who were the next to follow your family?
Well,
Our families like the Rubinstein and so on that came and went.
well, the Rubinsteins were here. The Rosensteins. I called Murray to see if he remembered any names. And here's some of the families that between us we thought of.
Before the 20s?
This would be in the 20s.
In the 20s.
You know, there was a store at the corner of Gore and Queen that was run. It was a clothing store, a men's clothing store. It was run by a Steinberg family, and they left here and they went to and located in Sherbrooke, Quebec, and they developed a very large business in Sherbrooke after they left here, and they were very good friends of my family's. My mother's, Mrs. Steinberg, my mother were very good friends, and I'll just run down some of these names. There was Joe Bassis. He had a store. The Hub Clothing was his store. You remember that, Max? And there's Morris Bassis. He had a second-hand store on Queen. Bert Siegel, do you remember him? Bert had an auto parts store.
He was from England.
He was from England, yeah. And there's a Goldenberg that was a furrier, and when he arrived here, he was a very ardent communist, and he spouted his, do you remember him? Spouted his communism. You couldn't talk to him at all. He'd talk all the time about communism, and everybody hated to even meet him. And he was a good furrier, though.
He had been in the Spanish War, I believe.
I think so, yeah.
He had fought on the side of the Republicans against Franco.
I think that's right.
Go on.
But he'd stop anybody on the street and he'd talk. And he just hated capitalism. And then there was a Mintz family, you know some of the girls. There's, what are their names?
Well, Max Mintz was one of the sons. I can't remember the name of the father or the mother.
Well,
There were 4 sisters?
yeah, 4 sisters. They all married out of their religion. His name was Beryl Mintz,
Right.
and he was in the scrap business. And then there was Abe Cohen and family. Abe had a store. His father had a store before him, between Bruce and Elgin. Was it?
I didn't know him.
And then he went into the newspaper business. He distributed newspapers and magazines. And then there was Dave Cohen, Abe's brother, who was assistant editor of the Sioux Star.
He has a son here.
He has a son here as a judge, and he's not Jewish anymore. And then there's the Dater family, Daiter. They had a cleaning establishment near Pilgrim on Queen. And then there is Sam Clamon. He had 2 sons. They were quite active in religious things. Sam was a manager of a clothing store here for Saul Friedman. And then there's another Steinberg family here in Canadian. We'll see.
Insurance?
No. Can't remember what he was. He had a store of some kind.
How about Rubenstein and Rosenstein?
Well, the Rubensteins had a store on Queen between Bruce and Elgin, and they lived on a little short street off between Wellington and Albert, near East. And they were very, very nice people. They were a member of our congregation.
They're good guys. What kind of store was it?
A clothing store. And then the Rosensteins. Now, Hattie Rubenstein, just recalling now, Hattie Rubenstein married a guy in South America, Buenos Aires, and lived there, and she used to correspond with my mother all the time. And then Dorothy married Tip Luxton here in the Sioux, and she was a nurse at the hospital for years and years and years. And the boys are either doctors or dentists. They moved out of the Sioux.
Wasn't there one that stayed here and worked at the Royal Hotel?
No, that's Rosenstein.
Rosenstein, okay.
That's
Was he not in the logging and the lumber business?
yeah. The Rosenstein family were a very interesting family. Mrs. Rosenstein was a very, very large woman. Her sister was even larger. Did you know the family? They were huge. And they lived in Ottawa and moved to the Sioux. And she started ladies where Connell Furs is now. And Mr. Rosenstein, her husband, had a store across the road on the south side of Queen. He had a men's wear store. And I remember there was a high school party on, and we some of the boys and I needed tuxes. We never had them before, and we went to Rosenstein's. We each got a tux for $7, a whole suit, and that suit I kept for years and years and gave to one of my nephews when he was about my age my size about that time. But anyway, he was a very nice man, Rosenstein. And there was two sons, Joe and Buster, and a daughter. And the daughter married a doctor in New York and moved to New York. Buster went to New York as a lawyer, and Joe is still here. Joe's in the hospital right now. He's very ill and not expected to survive.
This is a Rosenstein?
Rosenstein, yeah. And they made a lot of money in different businesses, but they sort of messed it up because Mr. Rosenstein was interested in mining. He figured that by anybody getting claims was going to hit it sooner or later. So anybody that had a grub stake or needed a grub stake for a mining claim that they owned, it would go to Mr. Rosenstein and get all the money he needed. And he was also in the lumber business. He had a lumber mill on steel plant property, and Joe ran that. Then they had a lumber mill at one time out at what was it called, out at Gooley Bay. Yeah, can't remember the name. Anyway, that's Joe. Then Ben Plyman was here. Did you know him? He was a salesman. He just traveled in and out of the Sioux.
Was he related to Sam?
Sam's brother. And then Vic Haft. You ever hear of him? Vic Haft had a furniture store here and a radio and television store. He married a Griffith girl here, and he has one son here in the Sioux who's a teacher. And he had his mother married a guy by the name of Wiseman, and he had a baker shop down near Gore Street on Queen, and he made beautiful bread, Jewish style bread. And I used to shop there when I was home, get a loaf of bread every day, hot bread. And it was just like the bread that we have at the Stag. And then he had a son and a daughter. The son was a colonel in the U.S. Air Force. He comes to the Sioux once in a while. You ever see him?
No.
He comes here about once every 5 years or so. He used to come up in his uniform. And then his wife, Mr. Wiseman's wife, had a brother by the name of Dave Brandt. I don't know, he had a little business, but I can't remember what it was. But he was a member of the community. Then, of course, there are the Overmans and the Barishes from Sioux, Michigan, that used to come over here. And then Max Yan, did you know him? Max Yan is here with his family. He was an engineer at the Abitibi paper company.
Well, the Dr. Goldberg also was across the river.
Oh yeah, Dr. Goldberg. He was quite active over here in the community.
He was in the U.S. Marine, and he was at Iwo Jima.
Yeah, he was here after the war. I mean, he came to the Sioux after the war.
Right, well, okay, during the war, I mean. He
Yeah.
was the Marine, and he
Yeah.
had been at Iwo Jima.
Right.
And
Then there was a Phil Conson. He owned the Kate's furniture or Furrier. You knew Uncle Phil, did you? Or did you? Or no, I guess not. Anyway, I don't know whether he's living now or not. Did you know him? He and his wife were quite active. He had the original fur shop. And then there was a family here by the name of Schnee. And they lived in a house on Queen Street near the present post office. And I don't know what he did. He really didn't get along too well financially, but everybody had to help him out. They had quite a large family, but I met one of his sons not too long ago. He worked for Canned Iron Foundries, and he was in the Sioux, and he stopped to see me. And then there's a family by the name of Erst. And somebody called me the other day to find out if I knew where the Erst family was, because the Central School was having a reunion, and he attended the Central School. I didn't know. And the Portnoy family, they were in the scrap business here. They were the enemy.
Competitors.
Competitors. Until I came along. And then I became friendly with them. Then Ben Kurt and his family. Yeah, and Richardson's. And Richardson had I think he took over the store that Rosenstein had, Mr. Rosenstein had the south side of Queen Street. Then he started a ladies' store, Richardson. Well, that's about all I have here.
Well, the family, I'm sorry, go on.
A lot of these families had kids. Some of them are still in the Sioux, but we don't see them in the congregation at all. Was there a lot of the children of these families that were lost to Judaism?
Quite a few. Quite a few.
The Min's family, all of them were lost.
Yeah.
There was a family that he ran the New American Hotel. He had 2 boys. He was always very talkative and argumentative, and his wife was a very nice person. I think they came from Toronto. One of them became a dental surgeon, and I don't know what the other boy became when he was younger.
I don't remember that.
He had the hotel at the corner of, or I don't know what you call that, a tavern or a hotel at the corner of Bay.
Still there. It's still there.
Yeah, it's still there, right?
Yeah, Bay and Brock.
Right.
I remember some of the owners of that hotel, but I don't remember any Jewish
Yeah.
because he wasn't a member of the shul.
Oh yes, he came. Oh yeah, he
He
came
did?
regularly. His sons came.
Is that right?
Oh yes.
You don't remember his name?
No, I'm trying to. I'm sure that if I spoke to some other members, one of them will. I mean, you've done a tremendous job there recalling all of that. Many people that I have forgotten.
Do you think that the reason that they were lost to Judaism is that they either didn't have a good Jewish education, or that there weren't enough Jews here to meet with socially, and they just intermarried and then just left? Or what do you think the reason was that so many of them left Judaism?
You've got to meet with people socially. If you don't, you go to somebody else. If you don't see them, the people you see more often are the people you associate with. And I don't know, now my mother had used to write letters in Yiddish to her friends. She was a great correspondent. She used to write letters in Yiddish, and she spoke Yiddish, and she spoke Hebrew to some extent. And yet, she didn't have too many Jewish friends. She had more non-Jewish friends here in the Sioux, because she associated. During the First War, I remember she belonged to the Red Cross, and they did a lot of sewing and work for the soldiers, and that was her big activity, and there were no Jewish people in that group. So they would meet with, there's another family too that I missed, Dr. Smith.
Yeah.
He was quite active in his
Medical
family.
doctor?
Medical doctor, and a very good doctor. And he had 2 girls.
And a boy.
And a boy, yeah. Sherwin, yeah. The boy is a doctor? Yeah. And the girls?
Well, one of them married a doctor, and the other one was a writer or something of that nature.
They went to Toronto.
Yeah.
Yeah, if I, sitting here thinking about it, I probably remember others as well. Because there were quite a few people who came to the Sioux in the early days that didn't have a store or a retail establishment, but they sold goods. They traveled from there was one family.
The Friedman is, did you mention the Friedman?
No, I forgot the Friedmans too. They were a prominent family.
Prominent, that's right. They're so prominent that you forget about it.
Yeah. Now, the Friedman family, Mr. Friedman, Sr., had his father.
Oh.
I'll start at the top. His father and mother lived on Dennis Street, and he was in the cattle business. And he sold cattle on the hoof. And his son, Saul, was quite an entrepreneur. He had very little education, but he became a fur buyer. And he was the biggest fur buyer in this area. And eventually he started a store, a large store here. And Harry came along, he was younger, a son, and he was the only one of the group that had a real education. He went to Michigan University, and he played on the football team. He was a big, big man. And he became quite famous. And then Saul and he started a branch store in Timmins. And Harry moved to Timmins. Harry, I always remember Harry and his wife, because they lived in a house that we lived in afterwards, my wife and I. And we rented it. Harry and his wife rented it from the owners, and we rented it afterwards. And it was a very nice house and a very nice yard. And about a year and a half after, more than one season after, Harry's wife came along and told my wife that she was taking her bulbs out of the garden. And we were, they were friends, but she was so upset about it, and my wife was, and she said, well, go ahead, and she dug all the tulip bulbs out of the garden. But anyway, Joe Friedman, there's another brother. Joe was in the cattle business, and Joe became quite a drinker and a gambler, And Joe would get in a little trouble once in a while. And at one time, right after the war, the last war, there was a moratorium on money. You couldn't take money out of Canada without a permit, and you couldn't bring money into Canada, cash that is. If it was a check, it'd be the same with a check. But anyway, my father got a call one day. Joe, the head of the customs, whom he knew quite well, said that, come on down here right away, we got a job for you. So he went down, and the customs man said, Joe Friedman came across the river last night, and he had an argument with the customs, and he had a lot of money on him, and he wouldn't give it up. So he just told the customs officer to go blazes, and he went uptown, and he didn't know whether to have him arrested or what, but he was drunk at the time. So my dad went down and got him out. Oh, he was arrested, that's right. He was kept in the clink overnight. You had to go down and bail him out and get it straightened out.
He was what you call the black sheep.
He was. But Saul was very successful. Saul has 2 sons, and they're quite successful, living in Toronto. Who else?
Bodnoff.
Oh yeah, Bodnoff. Do you remember?
Bodnoff.
Joe Bodnoff and
Sarah Bodnoff.
Sarah, yeah. They're both passed on, I think.
I know Joe did.
Yeah.
I don't know what his time.
Yeah. Anyway, they had a store, clothing.
Between East and Brock. Yeah, Brock. Between Brock and East on the south side, near the Duke of Windsor.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And they were a very nice couple. And they had one son.
I know they had one son. I don't know.
One son, I think. Big big fella, sort of fat. Oh, I guess that's better.
Mark Tan was born in Russia and came when he was 6 years old, for instance. So he's an immigrant, but he came as a child, and there were others like him.
There's another family, now to mention, born in Russia, a Friedman family. Do you remember Joe Friedman?
Yes.
He was an engineer.
He's from Hungary.
He's from Hungary, yeah. And he came directly to the Sioux from Hungary. Do you remember a period when there was a pogrom in Hungary? Do you recall that? There was a bad pogrom in Hungary. And those who could escaped. And it was just as bad as the Holocaust. And Joe came over with his mother. I don't think his father came over. And yes, he did. Yes, his father did, but he stayed in Montreal. And then Joe went to university here, became an engineer, and he worked at the paper company. And then he left, the family left here, and they started nursing homes. They started one nursing home in his father started at first, and Joe entered the business with him in Montreal, and then they branched out to several.
There was another family also working at the Abitibi lab. They were from Austria, and his name was Tom, but I
Bauer, yeah. That's right, Mrs. Bauer, Bauer, and Tom. And Tom worked as an engineer at the Abitibi, the paper company. And Mrs. Bauer was a very, very nice lady. And she was an expert bridge player, I remember. Real expert.
Well, there were a lot of people here.
Well, there are more than I've mentioned. There were, just like I said, there were a lot of people that came here and didn't stay very long. They only stayed. They made a living here, but now Ben Kurt, Ines Richardson's father, was an itinerant businessman. He actually went up the ACR with a pack on his back.
Peddler.
He was a peddler. Yeah, he used to sell stuff to the towns, the villages up there, the farmers, until he started his store here in the Sioux.
You guys got any questions? We kind of talked Mr. Cohen to pieces here.
And you said you didn't have anything to tell us.
Well, I didn't know whether I'd remember any or not. Any questions? Amy? Any questions about golf?
Well, Wilf, we're really delighted that you could.
So that is all that we have for you today. I hope you enjoyed this interview and got something out of it. We are going to be extending our exhibit on the history of the Jewish community here in Sault Ste. Marie. So if you haven't already, make sure you come and check out our exhibit. It's titled Rooted 125 Plus Years of Jewish History in Sault Ste. Marie. So come in and check it out. It will be extended 1 week, so it will be on until February 7th, 2026. So make sure you come in and check out the exhibit. We are open Tuesday to Saturday, 10 a.m. until 4 p.m. And as always, thanks for listening. Bye.
Did you know you can get unlimited admission to the Sault Ste. Marie Museum for a whole year for just $15? Yep, that's right, and there's more perks to that too. Go to Sault Museum, that's SAULT museum.ca, under Visit and learn more about our membership options. And if you're a business, corporate or nonprofit, we have plans for you too. reach out to us by emailing info@siouxmuseum.ca with any inquiries.